Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I'm Ashdin, doctor, your habit coach, and today we're going to be talking about something very, very interesting. We're going to be talking about identity. Who are you? No, who really are you? Because we're so often confused by this one statement, right? When somebody asks you, who are you? What do you define yourself with? And that is so critical. So we have an expert with us, and we're going to break down this whole concept of identity. So join me in welcoming Doug Dane to the Habit Coach podcast. Doug, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast.
Hey, how are you? Glad to be here.
My pleasure. I'm so happy to have you here. Doug, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm here in Canada. I divide my time between Canada and New York, and I'm a speaker, author, and mentor. I call myself an attitude expert. People have their attitude kind of messed up, and attitude is everything in terms of how you approach life and people in it. And so I mentor and coach people, and do a lot of work in workshops and seminars with corporations, trying to change their mind or help people change their mind about who they are and who they think they're not, in order for people to feel better about themselves and live a better life so they can help other people do the same.
I think what you just said was so critical, right? Who are you not?
Yeah.
It is a very important question to ask yourself. Who are you not? Because that also defines who you really are.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Doug, how did you get into all of this?
People ask me, where do I start the story? Because I start at different times. I guess for the purpose of your audience here, I would start in 2014. I was succeeding in a business I've been in for a number of years. I spent about 25 years in the industry. It was pretty much the first business I got into that I was successful around 24, 25 years old. And but I was still struggling. So I was doing well on the outside. Like everybody thought I had it together, and I was living a successful life. I was earning money, so I had the enjoyment of the lifestyle and things. And I was a really good actor because on the inside, something felt off. I dealt with anxiety and depression. I was nervous around other people. Of course, I was covering it all up. I was pretending to be somebody that I wasn't. I didn't want anybody to know how I was feeling or what I was thinking, And anyway, I happened to download a book called "You Were Born Rich" by Bob Proctor. He was the guy I met when I first got into business, but I'd forgotten about that meeting. And I got to reading the book again, and I got on his email list, and I got into a coaching program with him. And I made my mind up. I wanted to go work with him. And because as I got into this material and I was changing my mind, my life was changing, but most importantly, how I saw myself and felt about myself started to change dramatically. And so I just got so excited about what's happening to me. It's kind of like, when you see a great film, you just want to tell everybody. And so I just made my mind up. I was going to just help everybody I could, because of course, in 2001, so going back 13 years, I went public with my life story. It was in the newspaper here in Canada, national news. It was on television. And it was a story called Dark Past, Bright Future that I'd uncovered after my marriage had broken down. I had gone through a very violent, traumatic, abusive childhood, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, kidnapped at 15 years old, and then turned to drugs and alcohol 15 through 23. And people were coming to me and they said, how did you go from this dark past to creating this bright future? And I couldn't tell you how I did it. I mean, I know what I did, but I couldn't tell you how to do it. And so in 2001, I was on this pursuit to try to figure this out. And then I came along Bob Proctor again, and I learned things I hadn't learned or hadn't understood. And that just put it all together. And so then over the last 8 years, working with him and running his coaching department for his company, I'd written down these words, mistaken identity, because everybody was talking, and I would talk to thousands of people around the world, and everybody, no matter how successful they were, there were some parts of their attitude towards themselves, or in a lot of cases, 60% of adults, at least here in North America, I think it probably consists in other parts of the world, have suffered some form of what's called an adverse childhood experience, which like I had gone through. And they doubted themselves, and they didn't like themselves, and they didn't feel they were a good person, and all these negative things that I'm meeting them. I'm going, "You're amazing." I mean, I could see who they really were. I could see their gifts and talents, and
And they can't see it.
they can. Well, they can feel it, to some degree, but then it ebbs and flows and comes and goes. But they don't believe in themselves enough to act on it, and that was me too. I had this experience, this story, this success, and I wanted to tell people, and even like my own mistaken identity held me back from doing the book.
Right.
And so, anyway, so I started pursuing, how do I lay this all down in a way that people could understand? And I've always been a walk the talk kind of guy. Like, I believe I got to do it first before I tell anybody else to do it. That's just an integrity thing for me. And so it took me way too long. I made it way too complicated, and I thought it was hard. But when I figured it out, I realized it's very simple. It can happen really, really fast, and it's not as complicated as we were taught to think it is. And so I laid the book down. I wanted to write a book. I never wanted to write a book, truthfully. I wanted to get this process into your hands so you could make a transformation fast, because it happened really fast when I figured it out. And so I laid it out in this book in more of a handbook, step by step, over 30 chapters. There's 30 stories, there's 30 principles, and there's 30 action steps. So my story, the principles that I learned, not my principles, the principles that I learned, and how I use them, and then I get you to take an action step. And so I just wanted, there's a message in the book, and I needed a messenger, and this is the messenger.
Amazing.
Yeah.
This is, it's almost like a system that you've created for understanding our identity and shifting it.
Correct. Yeah.
So what is an identity?
Well, listen, the way I coin it is, I think most people are stuck in a prison of their own making. Some are stuck in an emotional prison of their own making, and they got arrested because of a mistaken identity. The real villain is their upbringing and their conditioning, and potentially their adverse childhood experiences, how they were treated as a kid or how they were raised as a kid. And
Doug, a clarification. Is the identity the prison? Is that what's holding you in?
no, well, you feel like a victim,
Right.
and you feel like there's something wrong with you. What I discovered, one of the chapters in the book is called "There's Nothing Wrong with You," because I kept going through my life going, "What's wrong with you, Doug?" And everybody said, "What the hell's wrong with you, Doug? What's wrong with you?" And I never got an answer, And I realized the reason I never got an answer, because there's nothing wrong with me. I was never questioning what was wrong with what I believed. I was never questioning what I went through as a kid, because that story, by the way, the abuse and all that came out at 39 and went in the newspaper, it was all blocked out. I didn't recall it, But I'm living up to 39 when I discover this. I'm living this way, feeling, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And we never question our upbringing. We never question our beliefs. We never question our environment or people around us. We're just trained as a little kid to ask the question, what's wrong with me? So when you're little, you're born as a newborn baby, you are filled with love and integrity. And what happens is that you start to, first off, you're an imitation. You start to imitate the adults. Okay. If I grew up in India, I would be eating your food. I'd be speaking your language. I would have your beliefs. Okay?
Correct.
I had the benefit of being adopted into that family, a very violent alcoholic home, but I got adopted. And if I've been dropped into another family, I'd be a different guy doing something different. Okay. So we start as imitations, and then when so we eat what the parents eat, we speak the way they speak. And then when they know that they have our attention, then they start driving in rules, values, beliefs, biases, prejudices, right? And as a little kid, you just take it in, you're wide open, and you become hypnotized into these beliefs. And then you don't follow the rules. or in your case, habits, right? So they go brush your teeth, Doug, make your bed, Doug, whatever it is. And they start drilling these rules in. And if you don't follow the rules, they judge you. And so when you're very little, you're watching the adults, they judge each other. They judge friends, they judge family. They're criticizing other people and judging other people. And then they start doing it to you because you're not following the rules.
Correct.
And depending on the situation, like I was in a fairly severe situation, but depending on the situation and the parents and their own awareness and experiences, it's not their fault. They don't know any better. But what happens is they start judging you, and then you take on the judgment and you start judging yourself at a very early age. Now, when you're little, you start fighting back because unconsciously, intuitively, you go, something's off track here. You don't know what the right track is, but you definitely feel like something's off track because what they're drilling into you, it doesn't match up to you, right? But no, we think there's something wrong with us. We question ourselves, and that's the beginning of this mistaken identity. And then you just go along, and they point you in different directions, and they introduce you to different sports and interests and all that. But generally, you follow a path that was laid out by others, and then you think you're that person, and off you go, and you act like that person, and your actions create reactions to confirm you're that person. And very rarely do people, it's a very small percentage of the population where people grow up from a young age being confident. Most people lack confidence, low self-esteem, inferiority complexes, all these ailments, and nobody's questioning why they feel the way they feel. They just think it's them. It's not them. It's the programming. It's all this stuff that was drilled into you. And we believe things that just aren't true, but we go with it.
It's like people think that you were born that way. Oh, he's born shy. Oh, he's born this way.
Yeah.
And you don't realize the amount of behavior that we exhibit is stuff like you said, which is either imitation or drilled into us.
Yeah.
And pulling us away from what maybe our authentic self or identity could have been.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
What of the elements that create this identity at this young age do you feel is the most critical? Right? We spoke about 5-6 of these, belief systems, etc., etc. What causes this judgment the most?
Well, I think, at least certainly in North America here, and it started back in the 50s. There's a huge compulsion for conformity, right? Which basically fosters a fear of criticism. Worrying about what other people are thinking about you.
Correct.
And so, if you're lucky enough to kind of realize, all right, I'm just not really agreeing with what I've learned. And you do, and this is very common too, people that do start to meet their true self, I say, and that's what happens in the book. You meet your other self. If people do that, it's still difficult to break out of the prison because they're worried about what people are going to think, right? So I think that got fostered at a very young age as well. And then it just, there's, again, 60% of the people like me, it causes a real distortion in your view on yourself and the world. I have clients all over the world, and I remember there's a lady here in Toronto that I worked with years ago, and she's Indian, grew up in an Indian family, born here in Canada though. And at some point I said, "You're not Indian. Your skin is the same color. You speak this, but she just didn't fit in with the culture." And she was, 36 years old, single, not married yet, school teacher, doing really, really well, beautiful person, but really doubting herself and afraid, of course, to make some moves because, there's, pressure from family conformity. And that's not just your culture. It's all kinds of cultures,
Correct.
So,
in fact, in our culture as well, this, what will people think is a huge thing. Right? We say, log kya bolenge, which is the same thing. Like, what will people say about you if you behave like this or do this?
Right.
And it really pulls you away from whatever expression it is that you are going to come up with.
Well, that's such a beautiful point. I remember so Bob Proctor, my mentor. He became a friend too. And he said one time, he said, Doug, you know what your problem is? And I lean in. What? He said, you're so self-centered. I go, no, I'm not. He goes, yes, you are. I didn't know what it meant. He goes, you are self-centered because you're constantly thinking about yourself. Meaning, I didn't feel good about myself. I was second guessing myself. I was wondering what people were thinking about me. How did I sound? How did I look? Do they approve of me? Whatever, right? And what that causes you to do, if you are too focused on self, he said it this way. He goes, Doug, he said, if you stop thinking about yourself, you won't find anything wrong with yourself. But I was so busy looking at myself all the time, right? And so it creates a lot of confusion and conflict, because there is conflict. Here's why. You do have, the way Bob put it is, and I love this, he said, you're a spiritual being. You have a gift called the intellect, and you live in a physical body. Or he would say, you think of yourself as a human being searching for a spiritual experience, when in fact you're actually a spiritual being attempting to cope with a human experience. And so you have this authentic self in you that was who you were when you arrived here. And then you have this false self that got created from your conditioning. And so you live a double life, right? You got ego fighting against your authentic self, or psyche battling your true self. Well, and you hang around with yourself your whole life. No wonder you're confused, because you're having this dialogue, right, in your head. So Bob said, stop it. Turn your attention away from you and just focus on other people. So the first chapter in the book, what I was really a message I really want to get across, and this is for the whole world, is we have to stop judging. We were taught to judge. I mean, judgment, I believe, is the pandemic. It's causing all kinds of problems all over the world. People are still, cultures, countries are still holding on to stories, hundreds of thousands of years old, and it's not working. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to stop judging other people and just turn my attention to seeing the good in them and doing good for them and serving and helping, much like, my mentor behind me here. I just wanted to focus on service, and something magical happened. I was in the habit of judging myself. When I formed the habit of not judging others, then I just automatically stopped judging myself, because that was the habit. Okay? And now if anybody judges me, I'm pretty much immune. Do I still judge people? Sure. It's an old habit. It does come up. I mean, you know better than anybody about habit.
And you're human, so it will happen.
Yeah, I'm human, right? Yeah, I am flawed. And so, but that was a real turning point. I wanted to put it the first chapter is just stop judging yourself, stop thinking about yourself, focus on other people.
Doug, there are two questions. One is on judgment, but I'll come back to the judgment question. The first one is something that you mentioned earlier, which was, when you were passing through that phase of your life, your dark phase, right? You were rebelling, right? You were having drugs, alcohol, all of that from the age of 15 onwards. The rebellious aspect is also an identity, right? It is an identity that you form or you chose. How did you know that was not your authentic identity?
Well, this is the way I put it. If you don't feel good in your own skin, if you don't feel good about yourself, if you don't like yourself, if you don't feel good enough or feel like you're a good person, then you've got a mistaken identity. Because when I arrived, as a little baby, I was handed up for adoption right away by my birth mom. And I was in foster care for 6 months, and then I got adopted. Well, in those first 6 months, as I said, I was just filled with love and integrity. Babies, they're very open and honest. If they're hungry or they're tired or they have a dirty diaper, they cry, they laugh, they don't hold back, right? They're just completely themselves, right? And I think sometimes we have to act like babies, And I think that's the key. And again, nobody's questioning why I feel the way I feel about myself if it's negative. Well, you are, but you think you're questioning yourself as to why yourself feels negative.
Hmm.
You're not asking the right question. It's not what's wrong with me. It's what's wrong with what I believe. What's wrong with what I'm following? What's wrong with where my attention goes? What's wrong with what I'm dwelling on? That's what's wrong.
So it is about you being absolutely comfortable in the skin that you have on, in the kind of emotions that you have, and that itself would be your authentic identity.
Yeah. You brought up emotions, which is a good point. One of the chapters in the book is called "The Elephant in the Room,"
Right.
and a friend of mine who I called him my Eeyore year. I don't know if you know Winnie the Pooh, but
Of course, the donkey.
yeah, the donkey. Well, I was, hi, it's me. How
Hmm.
you doing, Doug? I'm fine, because I was really struggling, And my friend Pete said, "You ever hear the story about the elephant in the room, Doug?" And I, oh, no. He said, an elephant, left untamed can, trample a village, do all kinds of damage, really hurt people. Your emotions are like an elephant. He said that same elephant, though, if you place a stick in the elephant's snout, you can become a good rider and you can do good work. He said, do you want your emotions trampling your life, or do you want to take control of the elephant and direct it to do good? And that, what I didn't realize is I was allowing my emotions to run my thinking.
Hmm.
I did not know, prior to 8 years ago, nobody taught me that my mind actually directs my brain and nervous system. I didn't know that. I heard the term mindset, but I didn't understand it. My mind directs my brain and nervous system. Well, I wasn't doing very well with what I was thinking. And physically, and my nervous system wasn't doing well. I figured, all right, I better learn how this works. And I discovered that my mind is a machine. I'm the operator. It directs my brain and nervous system, and I can take control of my conscious, rational thinking, and I can control my unconscious, where all my emotions, my emotional reactions come from. I didn't know that, and as soon as I took control of the elephant and tamed it, now I can do good work.
It's so interesting, taking control of your mind and then hence your emotions in the way that you feel about it. Doug, we were talking about judgment,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you said after I let go of judgment. Now, judgment is one of those crazy habits that so many of us have, and it's constantly either ruining our lives or at least guiding the way that we think about things in the world around us. What are some concrete steps that we can take to reduce the judgment that we have in life?
Yeah, well, for the first thing, I think the most important thing is everything we do, everything you do, the way you think, the beliefs that you have drilled into you that just create automatic behaviors and reactions, it's all habitual, including your thinking. So the first habit, to reiterate, is just form the habit. Decide, I am going to form the habit of stop judging other people. It's a lot easier to stop judging others than it is to stop judging yourself, because we're very critical.
But
As
how
a
do you realize if it's a judgment? Sorry
yeah.
to interrupt you. How do you realize if this is a judgment? Is it something that you say that is judging? Like many people think only if I'm saying something harsh is it a judgment. But judgments can
Well,
be of different kinds, right?
yeah, I mean, so in the context, because judgment has different definitions. So if I'm judging somebody in a critical way, that's not good. I mean, if you understand mindset and the law of polarity, if you put out negative, it's called the boomerang effect. So if you put out negative and you criticize somebody in your mind, you don't even have to say it. If you go, this guy is just, I don't know. And did you hear what he did? And look whatever it is, look what he's wearing, whatever. If you put out negative, by law, the boomerang has to come back and it hits you in the back of the head. So I think anything negative. But we also use our judgment through our perception to make decisions. You'll read something, you'll learn something. You do have to use your perception, process that information, and then you make a judgment call. Do I do this or do I do that? Do I accept that or do I reject that? You have the ability to do that. I'm talking about in the context of criticism. Again, we're all what's the word I'm looking for? Um, we're all worried what people are thinking.
Right.
Okay? And so I just don't think it's right. If I'm already worried about what you think of me, I don't think it's a good idea for you to look at me in a critical way. You're not helping me, right?
Correct.
I'm already suffering as it is. I'm causing myself to suffer, let alone that I sit down with you wondering what are you thinking about me. That's what I mean.
And the worst is when parents do this, which is like, I'm criticizing you, I'm judging you, but it's only for your own good. That's why I'm doing it. That's where it all starts.
Yeah. Well, here's something I learned. I didn't know this either, that if I'm judging you, it's actually, you're a mirror to me. It's not about me, or it's not about you. It's actually about me. And so one thing I learned is if anybody's judging or criticizing me or coming at me for some reason, I now know it's not about me. And so I don't take that on. I go, Ashton's must be something going on for him to treat me the way he's treating me. But that's the freedom. If you stop judging others, you stop judging yourself. And then when they judge you, you understand what's going on. And you can also be empathetic. You don't react anymore. Like if somebody comes at me and I just forgive them, for they know not what they do. So that's, but one more thing on habit, because you obviously, you're big on the habit in your book, is because when we were little and we were trying to get it right, like follow the rules, go brush your teeth. If you didn't follow the rules or pick up on the habits, you didn't get any praise. Mm-hmm. You got punishment or criticism. So when we're trying to form habits and we can't, 'cause you're not going to get it right away. And so that's it. I'm going to the gym every day starting tomorrow, right? And then tomorrow you don't go. Oh, Doug, and you start criticizing yourself.
I'm such a loser. I can't do this. I'm lazy. All these words come.
Yeah. And all those words that you're saying to yourself, you didn't say that to yourself when you're little. Somebody else said it to you, and then you took it on and went along with it.
Oh, that's very powerful. Right? The criticism that you have and the self-talk was actually taught to you by somebody. That's a mic drop moment right there.
That's what it is. Like, people, we just got to get that. If you get it straight, you go, this is crazy. Why am I living my life the way I'm living? I believe stuff that just is not true. I'll give you a quick example. Here in Canada, we have Halloween. And the night before Halloween is called Devil's Night. So you used to go out as a kid, you'd vandalize a neighborhood. We'd smash pumpkins and we'd put soap on people's windows and all that. Well, I was born on Devil's Night. My brother was born the day before Valentine's Day. And so my adoptive mom, called my brother the little angel and me the little devil.
Ouch.
So he became the favorite and I became the troublemaker. And guess what? I got into a lot of trouble. And
that was your identity.
My brother didn't.
Yes. Yeah. So Doug, when I first identify what my identity is, right? Like what my current mistaken identity is, I look at my belief systems, I see all the programming that has happened over the years, and I have my epiphany moments and my aha moments. What do I do then?
Well, I think when you do discover this, when you see, and through my book, I get you to do some exercises so you can look at yourself and your life, your past, and your current circumstance more objectively. Like you're you're an objective observer. You're looking and go, man, oh man, I can't believe I believe that. So that's the first stage, and then the next step is you kind of re-parent yourself, or you raise yourself back up, and you just ask yourself a couple questions. You go, if I didn't really care about what anybody thought, and if I believe I'm, creating the image of God and I'm engineered for success by my creator, which means I cannot fail at what I really want to do, what would I do? What am I passionate about? What's the wrong in the world that I want to make right? The wrong in the world I want to make right is this whole mistaken identity. Now, what's the hill that I want to take? What's the hill I'm prepared to die on? What's a movement I want to get behind? You just ask these kind of heartfelt questions. And it's difficult to ask those heartfelt questions when you have a mistaken identity. Like in the personal development industry where I spent a lot of years, everybody says, you can be anything you want, Doug. Well, that's not true. You can't. You can only be yourself. And whatever talents and abilities you have, you can use those to become something and do something. And so you start asking these heartfelt questions of what it is that you want or what moves your heart. And rest assured, whatever that answer is, if you have a heartfelt passion for something, that's who you are. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a passion for it. And you would be gifted with a talent and ability to fulfill that passion. And so you go, that's your true identity, right? And so then you go, all right, now what do I need to believe? Because you have to believe it as strongly as you believe what you're not. You have to believe certain things to achieve what it is you want to achieve. And so you just, same way you were programmed, you just install new beliefs through repetition.
So you identify a belief that works for you, and then you repeat it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And over a period of time, it becomes a belief that the old belief gets ousted.
Yeah, you reprogram your subconscious. Mm-hmm. And then, and like with habit, too many people try to start habits. I lost 20 pounds on an affirmation. And this affirmation, I live in a healthy body, I'm at my perfect weight. I live in a healthy body, I'm at my perfect weight. I'd write it, I'd say it in my head, I had it recorded. And this is a few years back, but this was in the summertime. And people kept going, have you lost weight? I go, no. Have you lost weight? I kept hearing this, have you lost weight? And I don't have a scale. I don't check my weight. Anyway, I was at a party one night. Somebody said it again. This was going on for about a month. And I went into the bathroom and there was a scale on the floor. So I stepped on it and I lost 20 pounds. I only knew that because I had gone to the gym, right? And I had weighed myself and I wasn't doing anything different. I didn't go on a diet, I wasn't really exercising, but that gave me evidence of what I was taught that I didn't quite believe, which was my mind directs my brain and nervous system. And so my body was responding to the affirmation. So somebody said it beautifully, said, program your mind first and then begin forming the habit. So get the habit in your mind first. And what sometimes with habits, you can just program your mind and you'll just start doing things automatically without even attempting. You just wake up one day and you go to the gym or you start eating differently. It can be automatic in some cases.
And affirmations are one way of programming the mind. All right, so that was Doug Dane, and we were talking about understanding our identity. This is just part 1. Make sure you stay for part 2, where we deep dive into understanding how you can change this identity and ultimately evolve through it.